The sun rises over my grandfather's land, casting golden light across the old wooden barn. It's been here for generations, standing strong through storms, droughts, and time itself. It's more than just a building. It's a piece of history, a monument to my grandfather's sacrifices. He was a decorated war hero, a man who fought for this country but never got the respect he deserved in his own hometown. Even after he passed, I swore I'd protect everything he built. The town has changed, though. What used to be wide-open farmland is now a manicured HOA community, filled with people who want uniformity, pristine sidewalks, and rules. Lots of rules. My grandfather's land sits right on the edge, grandfathered into the zoning laws. The HOA can't touch us. Or at least, that's what I thought. I step onto the porch, coffee in hand, when I see something that makes my stomach twist. A white luxury SUV idles near the fence line, its engine humming like an unwelcome intruder. A woman in oversized sunglasses sits behind the wheel, glancing at my barn with pursed lips. I know that look. It's the same look I've seen for years. The look that says this doesn't belong here. My phone buzzes. A text from my neighbor, Mr. Evans, an older black man who's lived here almost as long as my family. Mr. Evans, HOA's been circling your barn all morning. Watch your back. I exhale slowly. I've dealt with the HOA's nonsense before. Complaints about the eyesore of a barn, passive-aggressive letters about property values. They don't care that this land is ours, that it carries history. They just want it gone. Still, this feels different. The way the woman in the SUV lingers, the way my neighbor sounds genuinely worried, it sets me on edge. I set my coffee down and walk toward the fence. As soon as I get close, the SUV speeds off, tires crunching on gravel. A bad feeling settles in my gut. Later that afternoon, I check my mailbox and find a thick envelope stamped with the HOA seal. My stomach knots as I tear it open. Notice of violation. Structure deemed unsafe. Immediate removal required. Failure to comply may result in enforcement action. My hands tighten around the paper. They can't do this. The barn is on my land. They have no authority here. I look toward the barn, its wooden beams strong and weathered with time. My grandfather built this with his own hands. This isn't just a building, it's a legacy. And I'll be damned if I let them take it away. The next morning, I wake up to the sound of voices, low, hushed murmurs coming from near the barn. I throw on a jacket and step outside, my boots crunching against the frost-covered grass. Two men in hard hats stand by the fence, one of them tapping something into a tablet. A third person, a woman in a crisp white blazer and perfectly styled blonde hair, stands with her arms crossed, surveying my land like she owns it. I don't need an introduction. I already know who she is. Meline Cartwright, HOA president. The kind of woman who thinks property values matter more than people. The kind who clutches her purse tighter when she sees a black man walk by. The kind who's spent the last 2 years sending me letters about community standards as if I owe her anything. I take a deep breath, forcing my voice to stay steady. Pick your battles, my grandfather used to say. But something tells me this isn't a battle I can afford to ignore. I step forward. Something I can help you with? Meline turns, smiling that tight, condescending smile I know too well. Oh. Good morning, she chirps, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. We were just assessing a safety concern. I glance at the men. One of them avoids my gaze. The other grips his tablet a little tighter. A safety concern? I echo. Funny. No one mentioned anything to me. Meline sighs as if she's talking to a child. Well, the HOA has received multiple complaints about this structure. She gestures vaguely at the barn like it's a piece of garbage rather than my family's legacy. It's old, dilapidated. We're worried it could be a danger to the community. I cross my arms. It's not in your community. It's on my land. Her smile never wavers, but her eyes flash with irritation. Be that as it may, we have a responsibility to ensure neighborhood safety. And from what I understand, the barn hasn't been inspected in years. I exhale slowly. It doesn't need to be. It's structurally sound. Meline tilts her head, feigning concern. If that's true, you won't mind if we conduct a formal inspection? Just to be safe. Every instinct in me screams no. But I don't have proof that they're planning anything shady yet. If I refuse, they'll spin it against me. I can already imagine the narrative. Aggressive homeowner refuses safety inspection. So I force a smile. Sure. As long as it's legal. Medeline's eyes narrow just slightly before she nods. Of course. We'll be in touch. As they walk away, I pull out my phone and text Mr. Evans. HOA is up to something. I need to find out what. Because I know one thing for sure. This isn't about safety. It never was. By the time the so-called inspection happens 3 days later, I already know it's a setup. Mr. Evans, who's been dealing with the HOA's nonsense for years, warned me. They don't inspect. They condemn. Sure enough, when Meline Cartwright shows up, she's not alone. She's brought 2 men in suits, one holding a clipboard, the other a camera. The way they walk around, whispering to each other, ignoring me entirely, makes my blood simmer. I stand by the barn doors, arms crossed. So, what exactly are you looking for? Meline flashes that fake, patronizing smile. Oh, just standard structural concerns. Termite damage, foundation issues, anything that might make the barn a liability. I already know the game. If they want to find a problem, they will. The man with the clipboard makes a show of frowning, jotting things down. These beams look compromised. I step forward. That's oak. Solid as the day it was built. The other man snaps a photo. Still, age alone makes it a concern. I clench my jaw. The barn is safe. My grandfather built it to last. You don't get to just declare it dangerous because you don't like the way it looks. Meline sighs, shaking her head in mock sympathy. I understand this is personal for you, but surely you see how an unstable structure could affect your neighbors. I narrow my eyes. Oh, you mean your neighbors? Because the only people complaining seem to be in the HOA. A flicker of irritation crosses her face, but she smooths it over. The board will review the findings. We'll let you know the next steps. I don't like the sound of that. That night, I can't sleep. Something about the way they moved, the way they avoided direct answers, it gnaws at me. At midnight, I grab a flashlight and head to the barn. The wooden beams glow faintly under the moonlight, sturdy and unmoving, just as they've always been. I run my hand along the frame, feeling the strength in the grain. They're lying. Then something catches my eye. A faint mark near the base of one of the support beams. I crouch down, running my fingers over it. The wood is scraped, almost as if. A chill crawls up my spine. They tampered with it. I pull out my phone and call Mr. Evans. I need a favor. The next morning, I wake up to a loud knock. I throw on a shirt and swing open the door to find a uniformed man standing on my porch, arms crossed. A city official, not an HOA member. This just got serious. Mr. Carter, he asks. I nod. He hands me a notice. Your barn has been deemed structurally unsound and a safety hazard. You have 72 hours to comply with removal, or the city will move forward with demolition. For a second, I can't breathe. I scan the paper, stamped with the city's logo. But the complaint? Filed by the HOA board. They're pushing this through the city now. Rage burns through me. This is a setup. The official sighs. Look, I'm just doing my job. If you want to fight it, you'll need to take it up with the zoning board. Meline. She's pulled every string she can to get the city involved. I grit my teeth. I'll handle it. He gives me a pitying look. Clock's ticking. As soon as he leaves, I pull out my phone. They're fast-tracking demolition. We need proof. Mr. Evans responds almost instantly. Mr. Evans, I think I have something. Meet me in an hour. When I arrive at Mr. Evans' house, he's already waiting with a USB drive in his hand. Security footage, he says, handing it over. Last night, after the inspection. I plug it into my laptop and my stomach drops. The footage is grainy, but clear enough. 2 men, clipboard guy and camera guy, sneaking around the barn after the inspection. One of them drags something along the base of the structure.
A tool.
Deliberately damaging the support beams. My hands tighten into fists. They set me up, I say. Mr. Evans nods grimly. And now you have proof. My pulse pounds. I'm done playing nice. It's time to fight back. By the time I arrive at the HOA meeting that evening, I'm running hot. My grandfather's barn, his legacy, has a ticking clock on it, and the people responsible are sitting in that room, smug and comfortable, thinking they've already won. But I've got something they don't expect. Proof. The community center is packed. HOA meetings are usually a dull affair, but tonight, people are whispering, eyes flicking toward me as I step inside. Word travels fast when there's drama, and thanks to Meline, the whole neighborhood knows I'm fighting a losing battle. At least, that's what she thinks. She's sitting at the front, perched like a queen on her throne, her signature white blazer crisp and pristine. Beside her, the other board members nod along as she speaks. As you all know, the safety of our community is our utmost priority, she says smoothly, voice oozing self-importance. Unfortunately, certain structures pose a significant risk, not just to the property owners, but to everyone living here. I grit my teeth. She's setting the stage, painting my barn as some crumbling death trap. We tried to resolve this amicably, she continues, shaking her head in mock regret. But Mr. Carter refused to cooperate. The city has now stepped in, and demolition is scheduled. The room murmurs. Some people glance at me with pity. Others, especially the HOA loyalists, look pleased. Meline turns to me, smiling like a cat that's swallowed a canary. Mr. Carter, would you like to make a statement before we move forward? I stand slowly. The tension thickens. I let the silence stretch just long enough to make people uneasy. Then I pull a USB drive from my pocket and hold it up. I have something everyone needs to see first. Meline's smile falters just slightly.
Oh.
I walk to the front of the room, past skeptical stares, and plug the drive into the projector. This is security footage from the night after your so-called inspection. I hit play. On the screen, the footage flickers to life. The room goes silent. The two inspectors, the clipboard guy and the camera guy, are clearly visible, creeping around my barn in the dark. One of them kneels, taking a metal tool to the support beams. Scraping. Weakening. Tampering. A collective gasp ripples through the audience. Someone mutters, "What the hell?" I turn to Meline. Would you care to explain this? Her expression hardens. This doesn't prove anything. I scoff. It proves your inspectors deliberately weakened my barn to justify demolition. I point at the screen. That's criminal damage to property. And since you're the one who pushed for this inspection, that puts you in a real bad spot, doesn't it? Meline shifts in her seat, but her mask of calm barely cracks. This is clearly a misunderstanding. I don't let up. Is it? Because I already sent this footage to the city's zoning board. And my lawyer. The tension in the room shifts. HOA members who were nodding along earlier now look unsure. Whispers grow louder. Someone in the crowd, Mr. Evans, speaks up. Sounds like fraud to me. A murmur of agreement follows. Meline's nails dig into the table. She knows she's cornered, but she won't back down without a fight. Even if, and I stress if, there was some mistake during the inspection, it doesn't change the fact that the barn is unsafe. I nod. Good thing I had a second, independent inspection done this morning. I pull out another piece of paper. Certified structural engineer. No safety issues. I slap it on the table. Your entire case just fell apart. Meline's face flushes red. She turns to the board, desperate. This is ridiculous. He's just trying to manipulate the situation. But the damage is done. The crowd isn't on her side anymore. Someone calls out, if they did this to his property, what's stopping them from doing it to ours? The fear spreads. HOA members whisper among themselves, suddenly realizing that if Meline could fabricate a case against me, she could do it to anyone. A board member, a middle-aged man who's usually Meline's lapdog, clears his throat. Perhaps we should reconsider this demolition order. Meline whirls on him. What? But it's too late. The doubt has settled in. The power she had 5 minutes ago is crumbling like sand through her fingers. I lean forward, lowering my voice just enough that only she can hear. You thought you could erase my grandfather's legacy, but you underestimated me. For the first time all night, she has no words. Madeline's face is frozen in a tight-lipped, seething expression. The power she's wielded so effortlessly in this community is slipping through her fingers, and she knows it. The murmurs in the room are turning into full-blown conversations, people exchanging wary glances. I don't let up. I turn to the board. You all heard her. She pushed for this inspection.
She got her people involved.
And now we have video evidence that this wasn't an inspection, it was sabotage. A heavy silence. Then, one of the board members, Paul Mendez, a retired contractor who's usually quiet at these meetings, clears his throat. If that footage is real, then this is a legal matter. Destroying someone's property to force a demolition? That's fraud. It's criminal. Meline whips her head toward him. Paul, don't be ridiculous. This is just. But Paul doesn't let her finish. I was on the board when we rewrote the HOA bylaws last year. Section 12B. If any board member engages in fraudulent activity, they can be removed immediately. Medeline's eyes widen. I step closer. So, if this board wants to keep what little credibility it has left, they'll vote right now on removing Meline Cartwright from her position as HOA president. Gasps ripple through the room. The board members exchange nervous glances. Meline shoots up from her seat. This is outrageous. Her voice cracks, her usual polished tone giving way to pure desperation. You can't do this. I am the reason this community thrives. I protect property values. I make the hard decisions that keep this neighborhood. Paul cuts her off. Let's put it to a vote. The other board members hesitate, but then I see it, the shift. The realization that aligning with Meline now is a sinking ship. One by one, hands go up. Paul raises his last. Majority rules. Meline looks around, as if waiting for someone to defend her. No one does. Her face crumples. You idiots. Don't you see what's happening? He's manipulating all of you. This is exactly why. She stops herself, but I see it. The flash of hatred in her eyes. The entitlement. The belief that she's untouchable. I fold my arms. Go on. Say it. She clenches her fists. Her breathing is heavy, erratic. And then she makes the biggest mistake of all. She lets her mask slip completely. This neighborhood wasn't meant for people like you to take over. The room goes silent. That's it. That's the moment. The final nail in her coffin. Some people gasp. Others just stare. And then click. Someone is recording. I glance over and spot Lisa Reynolds, a neighbor who's been quietly filming this whole time. Her phone is raised, the camera catching every word, every ugly emotion twisting across Medeline's face. Lisa doesn't say anything. She doesn't have to. She just keeps recording. Meline sees it. She sees the red recording light. Her mouth opens, closes. She stumbles back, eyes darting around.
Panic.
You, turn that off, she snaps. This is private. You can't. Lisa raises an eyebrow. HOA meetings are public. And I think the city council will love to hear how you really feel about homeowners in this neighborhood. Meline goes pale. She turns to the board. You have to stop this. You can't let this spread. We have rules against posting. Paul shakes his head. Rules only apply if you're still president. And you're not. Meline staggers. She looks around, but every single face in the room is watching her unravel. I take a slow step forward. I told you. You underestimated me. Her chest rises and falls in sharp, panicked breaths. And then she runs. She bolts out of the community center, shoving past people in her way, her heels clicking against the floor in frantic desperation. The door swings open, and she disappears into the night. For a moment, there's stunned silence. Then someone laughs. A nervous, relieved chuckle. And just like that, the spell is broken. Lisa lowers her phone. I'll be sending this to every news station in town. Paul nods. And I'll be calling the city first thing in the morning. That demolition order? It's getting revoked. A weight lifts off my chest. My grandfather's barn is safe. And Meline Cartwright? She's finished. The next morning, the whole neighborhood wakes up to a scandal. Meline Cartwright's name is plastered across local news stations, her voice replayed in a damning loop. This neighborhood wasn't meant for people like you. The footage Lisa recorded went viral overnight. People are outraged. The HOA's so-called safety inspection is now under scrutiny, and the city council launches an investigation into how the demolition order was approved in the first place. Turns out, Meline had been cutting backroom deals for years, using her position to push out certain homeowners while giving her friends special treatment. By noon, it's official. The HOA board releases a public statement condemning Meline's actions and formally banning her from any future involvement. She's out.
Permanently.
But her downfall doesn't stop there. A city zoning officer visits my property that afternoon, clipboard in hand, shaking his head as he inspects my grandfather's barn. Not a single structural issue, he mutters, scribbling something down. This should never have been marked for demolition. He hands me the paperwork. Your barn's safe. The order is revoked. I exhale, relief flooding through me. It's over. That evening, I stand outside, staring at the barn as the sunset casts golden light over its weathered wood. The place where my grandfather spent his life. The place where he built something that lasted. I hear footsteps behind me. Turning, I see Lisa approaching, phone in hand. Well, she says with a smirk, Meline's house is up for sale. I raise an eyebrow. She grins. Word is, she's skipping town. Can't handle the shame. I let out a low chuckle. It's poetic, really. She spent years controlling this neighborhood, but in the end, she's the one being driven out. Lisa's expression softens. You did it, you know. You stood up to her. People are talking, realizing how much power they gave her. I think this neighborhood's finally waking up. I nod, taking in the quiet evening air. Good. It's about time. For the first time in weeks, the tension in my chest eases. My grandfather's legacy is intact. Justice was served. And Meline? She's nothing more than a cautionary tale now. I glance back at the barn one last time, smiling to myself. This land, this home, it's mine. And no one is ever taking it away again.